Good morning, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you might be doing. We wish to welcome you to the Silverlight Show. The Silverlight shines to illuminate that which lies hidden in darkness. For those of you tuning in today, we welcome you in. We're continuing our series on reading through the Bible, currently one chapter at a time, but my next episode I'm probably going to do two at a time because this chapter is the odd chapter out. Every chapter we've done so far has significance and meaning. This is one of these genealogy lists that I mentioned before. It's going to sound boring. Let me work through it with you at the end. This will be a shorter episode, maybe about 10 minutes at the most, but it's still important to understand if you want to understand the Bible. So here we go. Genesis chapter 5. Buckle your seatbelts, folks. It's very formulaic, and you're going to get used to this formula. This is the record of Adam's line. When God created man, he made him in the likeness of God. Male and female, he created them. And when they were created, he blessed them and called them man. And when Adam had lived 130 years, he begot a son in his likeness after his image, and he named him Seth. After the birth of Seth, Adam lived 800 years and begot sons and daughters. All the days that Adam lived came to 930 years, and then he died. When Seth lived 105 years, he begot Enosh. After the birth of Enosh, Seth lived 807 years and begot sons and daughters. All the days of Seth came to 912 years, and he died. When Enosh had lived 90 years, he begot Kenan. After the birth of Kenan, Enosh lived 815 years and begot sons and daughters. All the days of Enosh came to 905 years, and then he died. When Kenan had lived 70 years, he begot Mahalalel. After the birth of Mahalalel, Kenan lived 840 years and begot sons and daughters. All the days of Kenan came to 910 years, and then he died. When Mahalalel had lived 65 years, he begot Jared. After the birth of Jared, Mahalalel lived 830 years and begot sons and daughters. All the days of Mahalalel came to 895 years, and then he died. When Jared lived 162 years, he begot Enoch. After the birth of Enoch, Jared lived 800 years and begot sons and daughters. All the days of Jared came to 962 years, and then he died. When Enoch lived 65 years, he begot Methuselah. After the birth of Methuselah, Enoch walked with God 300 years, and he begot sons and daughters. All the days of Enoch came to 365 years. Enoch walked with God, and then he was no more, for God took him. When Methuselah had lived 187 years, he begot Lamech. After the birth of Lamech, Methuselah lived 782 years and begot sons and daughters. All the days of Methuselah came to 969 years, and then he died. When Lamech had lived 182 years, he begot a son. And he named him Noah, saying, "This one will provide us relief from our work and the toil of our hands, out of the very soil which the Lord placed under a curse." After the birth of Noah, Lamech lived 595 years and begot sons and daughters. All the days of Lamech came out to 777 years, and he died. When Noah had lived 500 years, Noah begot Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now, at first, listening to that and even reading it, it's dull as dishwater. Pretty boring. But there's some really interesting things in here. You have to really dissect to get into them. First of all, we kind of get a whitewashing of history. The whole Cain and Abel thing, gone. This is the record of Adam's line. Blah, blah, blah. And then he has Seth. No mention of Cain and Abel. But it says he begot a son in his likeness. Why is that not said about Cain and Abel? What was so different about Seth? And the interesting thing is this entire rest of this chapter is very, very focused on the firstborn. You get so and so lived X years and they begot firstborn whoever. And then after that, they had sons and daughters. They lived to the age of blank, and then they died. So it's very patrilineal in what they do, except for Seth. Seth is the third born. Remember, Cain and Abel. Cain and Abel did what they're famous for. Cain killed Abel, and then the land was cursed. I want to bring your attention to that curse as well, because when Lamech, who is Noah's father, he named Noah, saying, "This one will provide us from our work, from under the toils of our hand, from the very soil that the Lord placed under a curse." The Lord actually placed two curses on the soil. The first one was for Adam. Out of you will work hard on the soil, and it will only give weeds forth to you. And then another one on Cain, which was specifically, the soil is going to give you nothing. Now, we're looking at this, and this is a number of generations. Let's assume that people were roughly expanding in a multiplying sense. Every two people gave birth to 4, and etc., etc. So the population of the human race is not very big at this point. We can assume most of these people would have known each other to some degree or another. Because whatever this curse is, all these people are struggling with it. And they don't know why. They're just saying, we know it's a curse. That's everything. Enoch, everybody points to Enoch, so I can't ignore it. Enoch, all the days of Enoch came to 365 years, and Enoch walked with God, and he was no more, for God took him. The book of Enoch actually breaks this up in a very interesting way, and I personally consider Enoch part of my head canon. It's a very good book. But supposedly, Enoch had a couple kids, and then he was taken up and shown the marvels of heaven. He was allowed to come back down and give instructions to his children, and then he was taken aloft once more. And that does fit the biblical narrative quite well. It does say he had a kid, then he walked with God for 300 years, and then after another 300 years, he was gone. Okay, this is actually surprisingly self-aware. It's not quite scripted like a book, but it has been very carefully edited. Somebody's been in there and said, we got to make this stuff make sense, which is not always true when you're talking about the Bible. But where it really comes in handy, the numbers were boring. I'm not going to say there are people who specialize in nothing. There's nothing they do more than just putting out, who's related to who and how we can get connections in. Indeed, in my first book, I did that with Solomon's genealogy, and I proposed that one of his wives was actually not an Israeli, which was forbidden. But you can read that in The Secrets of Solomon. But here, the attention to detail is rather remarkable. I don't want to sit there and calculate the beginning of the world and that sort of thing. Far smarter people than I have done that. But what I was curious about was Methuselah. Methuselah was supposedly the oldest person who ever lived. And at 969 years, indeed, that is the longest that we hear that anybody has lived. And I sat down and I worked it out. So Methuselah lives 187 years, he gets Lamech. Lamech lived 182 years, and he begot Noah. Now, if you actually work this out, and then you go on to chapter 6, which I don't want to spoil, this means Methuselah, the oldest and probably the wisest of this lineage of humankind, dies within 5 years before the flood, depending on how you want to tap the math around. But he pretty much dies and the flood starts, so Noah gets to take over the mantle of humanity. And it just surprises me that there's that much attention to detail and what is seemingly random numbers. So it is worth our time to study what's going on, because The numbers work out. And ancient people, if we want to dismiss them as simply trying to figure or fill in numbers to try to make things look good, no, at least in one case, I know they've made it work. When the flood happens, despite these people, names and numbers being tossed out there, at least one set of math is consistent across 2 chapters. So that's something very curious. Nobody really thinks of anybody trying to put things in the Bible, but this is one of the reasons I think people turn to the Bible for codes. They think there's hidden wisdom in there. I just personally think it was an author trying to make sure everything made sense so that nobody called them out. No matter what, like I said, it shows incredible attention to detail. There's a few other segments like this where they basically want to skip from one set of people to another, but there's that much attention to detail in it. Like I said, there's people who spend their lives making sense out of these genealogy lists. Maybe when I'm retired, when I'm older, maybe I'll sit down and do that. I always picture myself with a big blackboard behind me with all these names and everything, tracing who is who and stuff like that. Because supposedly you can trace it straight up to Jesus. And we know we have a confirmed date for him. But that's a task for a very different day. I have many books I want to get through. I've got the Tanakh, I've got the New Testament, I have the Quran, I have a whole lot. This is a series that I don't anticipate ending anytime soon, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I'm enjoying reading it. I've always said that you should read the Bible cover to cover once a year, and usually I read a heck of a lot more than one chapter a day, but the next 2 chapters I'm probably going to read together, because you know what? It's the flood story. And yeah, that's going to try. Well, actually, flood story is about 4 or 5 chapters. I'll probably break it into, or maybe I'll do a super episode. Haven't decided. That's for tomorrow. But anyway, we hope you enjoyed this episode of the Silverlight Show. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe. Don't forget to buy the merchandise, which are the books listed in the link down below. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow, and we hope you have a fantastic day.